let's get into it. Let's talk about how to analyze poetry. So poetry is a form of literature that is written in verse. Poetry will oftentimes use visual devices, figurative language, and sound devices to produce the desired result. So on your notes in the top left-hand corner, it says, what is it? I want you to give this definition of poetry. And under it uses, what are some of the things that it uses? So we know it uses visual devices, it uses figurative language, and sound devices. To analyze poetry, we are going to use the SWIFT method. The SWIFT method is structure, word choice, imagery, figurative language, and tone. So let's start with structure on your notes. It's the right-hand side. It says step 1, structure. When analyzing poetry, first look at its structure. So what are some of those things? There's the type of poem. There's the rhythm. There's the stanza and line structure. There's rhyme scheme. All of these make up a poem structure. The structure of a poem refers to how it is written. When analyzing structure, we look at the poem's rhyme scheme, rhythm, and its organization. So this is our definition of what structure is. So your notes say define structure, write that out. Within the structure, we have a stanza. We talked about this yesterday. So a stanza is a group of lines in a poem. These are like the paragraphs of poetry. So define that stanza for me. There's also couplets. Couplets are just when we have a stanza that only has 2 lines of poetry, and a quatrain is when you have 4. Structure and rhyme scheme. So a poem's rhyme scheme is its pattern of repeated end rhymes, so rhymes at the end of the line. Rhyme scheme is noted by assigning each end rhyme sound with a letter. So under the little guy that says structure and rhyme scheme, you need to write down this definition, pattern of repeated end rhymes. Let's look at this example of rhyme together. So you're going to do this with me. So word by word, line by line, the dead man touched me from the past, and all at once it seemed at last the living soul was flashed on mine. So I put an A next to the word line because line and mine rhyme together. So both of these rhyme, so I want you to underline line and mine, and I want you to write an A next to both. And then past and last also rhyme, so I want you to put a B and underline those 2 words. So when thinking about the rhyme scheme, we always want to focus on that last word. Now let's talk about the rhythm. Rhythm is what gives its poetry its sound. Each line is filled with syllables. The syllables can be stressed or unstressed. The stressed symbol is going to be marked with this little dash, and the unstressed will be marked with a U. So let's break down what this looks like, and I want you to define rhythm as what gives it sound. I want you to go through this example with me. So Jack and Jill went up a hill. So Jack is 1 syllable. There's a lot of emphasis. There's a lot of strength on it. So we mark it with the dash. And is kind of soft. It's kind of fluid. So we mark it with a U. There's not a lot of emphasis. We don't stress that word. Jill. Jill is heavy, right? We put a lot of stress. We put a lot of emphasis on it. Went. Went is pretty normal. So it's unstressed. We're not putting emphasis on it. Up. Up is stressed. A, we don't want to put A stress because that sounds silly. And then hill. So this one has a pretty natural rhythm because it goes stressed, unstressed, stress, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So the way that this reads, we do this naturally when we are reading aloud. So when you're practicing the rhythm, I want you to actually read it out loud. You can even clap with it. So Jack and Jill went up a hill. If I read it as all of these little U's, if I read those as stressed, what that would look like would be Jack and Jill went up a hill. That sounds silly. That doesn't sound natural to us. So that is not stressed. Poetic form. There are so many different ways of writing poetry. We actually went over several examples yesterday. We talked about limericks, and we talked about free verse, and we talked about slam, right? So form can be determined by the syllable count, how many syllables, how many lines a poem has, the rhythm, so the A-B, what's in it, or even just the way that it's organized. So these all form our poetic form. Now I want you to flip your notes over to step 2, word choice and tone. When analyzing poetry, take a close look at the poet's word choice. What kinds of feelings and emotions do the words evoke? Are the words positive or negative? How do the words make you feel? Which words stand out the most? So yesterday when we did the activity where we circled the emotional weight words, that's what this is asking you to do. In poetry, every line, word, and even syllable is intentional, and it has a purpose. We look at a poet's word choice to help determine the meaning and tone. The tone is the narrator's attitude about the subject of the poem. Because poems are as short as they are, poets will put a lot of emphasis. They're very careful with the words that they choose so that they can best convey their message. So for this, why do we look at word choice? That's in your notes. This is why. And then define tone for me. That would be the second box underneath the why we look at words. This is our tone. Let's look at this example. So this is our word choice example. Do it with me. So if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to, broken, and stoop and build 'em up without worn tools. So in this example, there's words that really tell us what this poem is all about. So words like dream, so our thoughts, triumph, which is a positive thing, right next to disaster. He even capitalized it. Imposters, phonies, fake people, twisted. All of these words really tell us the mood of this poem. All of these words are really dramatic and they're really strong and emotionally charged, and these words help convey that. Imagery. So we're on to step 3. When analyzing poetry, I want you to try to visualize and picture the imagery the poet is creating. So what images do you see? What colors does the poet use? What texture, that's supposed to say what? What texture does the poet use? Poets create imagery when they connect to any of the audience's senses, especially the sense of sight. Poets use descriptive words and figurative language to enhance the imagery in their poems. So what sense do we try to connect with most? It's that sense of sight. Let's take a look at this example. This is on the bottom right-hand corner of your notes. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. What kind of images are you seeing in your head? This poem creates a sharp image using a sharp contrast of colors. So he talks about red and white, and these evoke different feelings within us. So on your notes, I want you to write down what are the images that you are seeing in your head when you see this poem. Step 4, so we are looking at the third page of your notes. When analyzing poetry, we also want to look carefully at the figurative language. What figurative language is included? How does it enhance the meaning of the poem? What kinds of images are created? So you're writing these down in the section at the top left corner. So figurative language is language that uses words or phrases that have a different meaning than their literal meaning. So this is our definition. This is just a recap of what we talked about in Unit 1. So give me these definitions of similes and metaphors and personification as well. So simile is a comparison of two things using like or as. Metaphor is a comparison made between two things that are not similar, but it doesn't use the words like or as. And then personification is when inanimate objects are given human characteristics. So howling in the wind, for example. Wind can't actually howl. So let's look at this example. This is Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. So here, Hughes is actually giving us two metaphors. So the first one, he's comparing life to a broken-winged bird. This is a metaphor. And our other one is when he says life is a barren field, frozen with snow. In your notes, I want you to write what you think that this means. What does he mean when he says that life is like a broken-winged bird or a barren field frozen with snow? Step 5, so this is going to be on the back of your notes, starting in the left-hand corner. Theme. When analyzing poetry, read to understand the poem's theme. So, what is the message of the poem? How does this message apply to you? How does this message apply to society? What are they trying to tell us? This is just a recap because we've talked about themes before, but the theme of a poem is its message. Themes should be a universal statement that can apply to a broad range of people. It's the life lesson. So themes need to be more than one-word statements, please. Themes should be written as complete sentences. They are complete. And the theme is a topic. So what is the topic of the poem and what is the author's opinion of that topic? This is a section from We Alone by Alice Walker. We alone can devalue gold by not caring if it falls or rises in the marketplace. So the opening lines in this poem lead us to think about the power of humanity and the sense of responsibility. Thus, the theme will likely be something like, collectively as a whole, society can change for the greater good when people act together. This is shown with the emphasis on the word we. So, what do you think that this theme is? Or you can say it in your own words. Just a quick recap. Our acronym is structure, word choice, imagery, figurative language, and theme. So what you are going to do is you are going to take the poem that we analyzed yesterday and you are going to apply this to that poem so we can kind of figure out the theme. For the submission for this assignment, you are going to submit all of your notes. You are going to submit the poem for yesterday, and you are going to submit the Swift assignment.